We're doing this meeting according to the state regulations remotely via Zoom. So I'll do a bit of attendance and then run through the agenda. So if we have members present, Nate Jerome.
Here.
Bruce Edwards.
Here.
Kristen Clark.
Here.
And Pete.
Here.
Excellent. And then administrators, Mr. Friend.
I am here.
Excellent. Nancy's here. And then, oh, look at that. We got Mr. McCarthy.
Present.
Mr. Goyette.
Greetings from the Cape.
Oh, wait a minute. From the Cape. Golly. All right. Fair enough. Ms. Falk.
Here.
And looks like we got some special guests. Mr. Harrison's joining us. And Mr. Whittier.
I'm just an observer.
Well, this will be our finest meeting, so this was the one to observe. Have I missed someone? Did everybody say the Pledge of Allegiance before we got on camera? Then I'm going to go right to the consent agenda. This is the minutes of April 6th, the bill schedules of April 6, April 13, April 20, and April 27.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Made in second. Nate, any questions or comments?
Not at the time, no.
Bruce, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have two questions for Nancy. The 413 bill schedule, Bates number 10, at the very bottom, there's two things for MSSA for $193.50. Rigorous Discourse Conference. Are these the same things or?
What page was it on, Bruce?
Bates number 10 at the bottom. There were two items for $193.50.
MIAA?
MSAA.
MSAA, yeah, those were conferences.
Okay.
Both of
And
them.
then my other question is for Ted. On the 427 schedule, there was a $322.07 charge, investigation leak for fire system. Just curious what this was.
So we've had a significant leak in the back. Our water tanks completely drained out. And so they still haven't found the cause of that, and it's an ongoing issue. So we're putting in an insurance claim, but they're still working on that issue. I'll get an update from Roger as where it stands right now, but it's been an ongoing issue. They've been in back, they've had to dig up the back behind my office, and they just haven't been able to track down what the problem is. So for the next meeting, I'll give an update on that, the overall, where we stand on that issue.
Thank you.
Kristen, questions?
No, I just have one quick comment though. As far as the fire pump in back, it was running the day it was leaking. So I don't know if that helps you guys.
I did. You had told me that already, and that wasn't the issue. So
Okay. So something's triggering the pump to switch on.
something went wrong. Yeah.
So we probably have a short in the system then. Okay.
Well, they've done everything.
Okay.
We've had cameras going through the pipes, everything. So it's an
And they've
ongoing.
checked the electrical system too. I'm assuming that's where they would have started.
There wasn't an issue with the electrical system.
Okay.
Pete, questions?
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
I'm going to open for a vote. Nate?
You already did that.
Sorry,
no,
we're
not the
going to do
vote.
all roll
I
call votes.
apologize.
Yeah.
Mute my-
Jerome, I.
Bruce?
Edwards, aye.
Kristen?
Clark, aye.
Peter?
Tough side.
Paul Brennan, aye. Carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is a student update. Are there any students online?
Nikki doesn't look like she made it yet. Hopefully she'll join us shortly, but she's not
No
there.
worries. If she gets on. I was scrambling myself. I get that. Then, you know what, if we can't have a student, how about a principal? Let's go to a principal. I have a high school update, Mr. McCarthy. He's on mute. Mr. McCarthy, that sounds great. Do it again.
Listen, some people prefer me that way, so I'm gonna share my screen and then walk you through a presentation I made. Just kind of briefly outlines how we've handled the situation so far and what we're thinking about going forward. So bear with me. Okay, I think you guys should be able to see that,
We
right?
can see that, yes.
Okay. Okay, so obviously the primary issue that we had once we were sent home on March 13th was how to continue instruction for the kids. Lots of school districts have handled this in a number of different ways. Ted's been pretty consistent about the message that we want to share to the communities, that we see this as a health crisis and a mental health crisis first, and if school needs to take a little back burner for the time being, that's going to be fine. We'll be able to catch our kids up in the long haul. And I just want to say that I think that approach in the beginning has paid dividends now that we're going into week 8. So the first couple of weeks out, we told kids, it was blanketly said as optional assignments because we didn't at that point know how long this was going to last. But then when it became clear that I think the first date that when the governor came out that we were going to be out through May 4th, then we obviously need to have a little bit more of a structure than the optional assignments the kids were doing to that point. And the students were doing work to that point. Probably closer to 70% of the assignments the teachers were assigning were coming back, but we weren't tracking it in a systematic manner because everything was optional. Once we realized it was going to be for a prolonged period, we shifted our approach. So the system that we've adopted at the high school is teachers post their weekly assignments on a Monday. We ask the kids get them back on Friday. That gives the teachers the weekend to give feedback and grade. Obviously, if something comes up in a student's life that they need an extension, that's a non-issue at this point. We're taking late work in. Our goal now at this point is to just keep kids connected to learning. Students receive either a 0, 1, or 2. 0 means you didn't try the assignment at all. 1 means you put some sort of effort into it, and 2 means that you completed the assignment as expected, or at least to the teacher's standard. Teachers are additionally holding 1 to 2 Zoom classes a week. Again, like most schools, this is not a requirement for teachers, but I would say approximately 80% of the teachers are holding at least 1 Zoom class per week. And I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide and come back to this one. This is the data that we've tracked up to this date. So if you can see, what we're really looking at are these two numbers combined, the 78% and the 6%, because that tells us the number of kids who are engaged. So 78% of the assignments that are being given across the school, all levels, all students, are being completed, receiving a score of 2, and another 6% are receiving a score of, another 6% are at least getting a 1. So it gives us about an 84% of students who are actively engaged each week with the learning that the teachers are providing, leaving a gap of 16% of kids who at this point are not connected with school. So 84% for work that the kids know is not affecting their overall grade, we feel is a pretty good, it speaks pretty well of the students and the families and keeping kids engaged during these challenging times. Oh, I don't know why, there we go. So what we also did once we knew that we were going to be out for the remainder of the year is we thought about what would we be like if we were 15 or 16 or 17 years old, and we were looking at doing all of our schoolwork at home. We wanted to provide an additional incentive for students. And in fact, even though because the students are not earning credit for their 4th quarter classes, they're not earning a grade, they're just earning a pass or a fail. We wanted to provide an incentive for kids to run through the finish line and do all of the work all the way through June. So In the typical year, if you were a student and let's say you had an 84 as a year-to-date average, and you really wanted to try to get your grade up to a higher grade in that fourth quarter, and you really busted your butt, you could raise your grade with significant effort, a couple points, 3 points or so, with a really good fourth quarter showing and a good grade in the final. So we decided as an incentive for kids, we would bump their overall grade in the course 3 points if they complete at least 70% of the work, of the remote learning work. And again, since we're seeing about 80%, a little bit over 80% of kids doing the work, we feel like this has worked out well. Certainly since the work became a little bit more structured and students and families were seeing those grades put into the grade book, they could kind of monitor their progress that way. We've seen an increase in the work being done, and students have responded to me privately via email, and then also in some of the Zoom meetings we've had, that they found that the incentive is working. So any questions on the academic approach that we've taken, or grades or curriculum or anything like that before we move on to the next section?
I have a question,
Nate?
Ted.
Sorry, I'm just going to run through Nate.
Took me a minute to get off mute. No, so far this is great. Thank you.
Bruce?
What are we doing with the 16% of kids that aren't completing or aren't participating in this? Have we been reaching out to them to follow up to find out why and to encourage them to do this, and making sure that they have the access and the equipment and the access to participate?
Yeah, I'm going to get to, that's a great question. We're going to get to that in, I think, maybe the next slide.
Kristen?
No, I'm good.
And Pete?
Nope, thank you, Ted.
Okay. Okay, so to Bruce's point, so we do have 16% of the kids who have not engaged the way that we were. Now, you got to remember, it's probably, if we actually looked at the number of kids and we've done that work, it's probably around 16%, but you could be doing, I could be a student and I could be doing all of my work in 5 of my classes and just not doing it in 2 others. So that number is a little bit variable. But from the very first day that the crisis happened, once we realized we were going to be out, students who were at risk were identified and given a point person. That point person was usually either a special ed teacher or a guidance counselor. And that person was attached to the student to provide an additional layer of support to help them make sure that we're doing everything we can to help that kid meet with success. Additionally, students whose year-to-date grade was below 65, because there's no way to improve your grade other than the 3 points. During fourth quarter, we wanted to try to get as many kids who could pass for the year as possible to meet that threshold. So we asked teachers to allow kids to make up work for the third quarter. And so that point person who was assigned to the student, let's say Ted's failing math with a 62 for the year. My point person would connect me and my math teacher and say, hey, Miss Gamble, what can Ted do in pre-calculus to get his grade above a 65? Christina would have provided these 5 assignments or 6 assignments, or whatever the assignments were. Maybe you failed a big test and she let you retake. It counted for a lot, and then your grade is a 65. Once you're at 65, then you're no longer in danger of failing for the year, but we still continue to expect you to do the work. Additionally, those kids also now have an instructional aide who's assigned to them as well, who's checking with them once or twice a week, going over the assignments that have been given, sitting down, doing virtual Zoom meetings with them, walking them through. For the kids, to Bruce's point, who we're not seeing, we're not seeing any work from, those kids are being identified by classroom teachers. Classroom teachers are contacting home for the typical kid. Again, if it's, Katie and Katie's not doing her English work, Mr. Marcucci might reach out and say, hey, Mr. McCarthy, why isn't Katie doing her work? Is there anything we can do? Does she need any help? And we're getting a variety of responses. We're getting, no, it's just hard to motivate her right now. Hey, she's just, she realizes she needs to get back to work. She's about to, she's going to start doing work next week. Boy, both of us are working from home. We only have one computer, at which point we would point them to Mr. Durgan to get extra support for them. And then we're also running to families who have healthcare workers in the house, and they just don't have the parent sort of, constant parent support to get kids to connect. So there's a variety of reasons for the kids who aren't engaged at all, and we're trying to meet with those individually. We've called home. I called home, I want to say, to about 8 or 9 families last week for kids who were struggling to see what we could do. The answer I got most frequently when I was making those calls was the parent knew what the situation was trying to motivate the kid, appreciated us reaching out, and was hoping to get the student to reconnect for the remainder of the year. When we call home, we point out that it's not too late. Students can jump on the horse right now and get their work done. Go back as far as they want to do the work from previous in the remote learning period, so that they can still earn that pass for fourth quarter and even potentially the 3 points. We're hopeful that with enough kids doing the work, and one of the things we've been pointing out to parents when we've had parent Zoom calls, I'll talk about that in a second. I talked to one mom, and she was saying, well, I'm glad you called, and I'm glad you told me that 84% of the kids are doing the work, because he's saying that none of his friends are. I'm like, well, that's just actually not true, because we're monitoring this pretty closely, and we can tell you that work is getting done. It's not perfect. These are some of the kids in this situation, obviously the kids that we spend the most time with at school and require the most adult support. One of the things that we've talked about as a faculty that's come out of this is trying to find ways to help kids become more independent, particularly if we look at next year and we can predict that there might be a return to remote learning next year. How are we going to have these same kids who are struggling to engage with work right now? How are we going to build them up so that they can be more successful next year for a 2, 3, or 4 week period? So it's an ongoing job. We're not perfect at it by any stretch, but we feel like each kid in this category is getting significant adult attention, and we're trying to do as much as we can around their academics. In addition to the academics, mental health is also a huge issue. I know Mr. Gillen is holding either phone calls with kids or emailing with kids once a week, if not more. Ms. Brusso, our other school adjustment counselor, she holds lunch groups where the kids will Zoom call in for a lunch meeting, because those are kids that she would typically see at lunch at least 2 or 3 times a week, and kids have found those very helpful. And other counselors are reaching out, Ms. Bioki, Ms. Miller, Ms. Carnes, those guys are reaching out to their individual students as well in different ways. So the goal is having every kid feel like there's a connection to school, at least through one felt. So that's sort of where we sort of taking our student support services. Any question on this sort of overall global topic?
Nate?
Yep.
No
Bruce?
questions from me. Thank you.
No questions?
Kristen?
I'm good, thanks.
And Pete?
Nope. Things have been moving good, very well. Thanks, Ted.
Okay.
So what do we got next?
So beyond sort of the academics and the nuts and bolts of like supporting students, one of the things that we're also mindful of is trying to keep connected to the culture and the community of school. One of the biggest side effects of this whole thing is that school is a home and a community for the 385 students who walk through the door every day, as well as the 50 staff. And we don't want this prolonged period to weaken our school culture, or to make kids feel disconnected from school, or make it feel like we didn't care that they were gone. So we've been doing things, fun things, things to try to get kids connected, so that they remember why they like school and what school is all about. So to that end, I've held multiple Zoom meetings with the senior class, the underclassmen, the class officers for each grade. I held a meeting with each one of those groups once at the beginning. I plan on doing another one coming up soon. Other student groups and clubs have also held Zoom meetings. I know Mr. Loss is regularly meeting with the drama club. Ms. Molazari is regularly meeting with the GSA. Connections is meeting via Zoom. Again, just to keep the kids connected to themselves, connected to the things that they're excited about at school, and reminding them of what parts of school that they really enjoyed. Right at the beginning, our school council, which is just a great bunch of kids, they recognized that this is going to be a challenge, and they came up with a virtual spirit week that had kids participating in various challenges throughout the week, and we had a good school buy-in with that, where kids were posting pictures with their pet, or Make It Monday, where one kid is making an omelet and another kid's making a birdhouse, and they were showing, you know, things that they were making at home during that time. I've been running again, which has been nice, and so I invited some kids to and the staff into I call it the McCarthy Invitational, and you could run a race of any distance you want. It could be 1 mile, it could be 5 miles. There were 4 of us who did a half marathon, and we had about 70 people participate in that. Colleen Moltazari started a faculty lip sync contest that got broadcast on Rich's morning announcements. Rich Levin Savage continues to broadcast morning announcements to the kids at least once a week, where he just updates the kids on anything that's come up, reminds them of things that they need to do, like their work or the 3-point incentive. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback about the lip sync contest and Rich's morning announcements as a way to sort of, again, keep kids connected. Yesterday, Community Service Learning Club, run by Miss Gamble and Miss Sypek, and Miss Senecal had a huge role, along with Jen Casino, one of our seniors. We were supposed to host their actual Walk Out of Darkness on yesterday, and that's, even though it was virtual, the CSL raised over $12,000 for Walk Out of Darkness, which is a suicide prevention group. So the kids were really excited about that they were able to make that happen, even though we were not at school. And then finally, I'll talk about the seniors in a minute, but we are currently working on plans for our seniors and how to navigate this end of year period for a group of kids who are just fantastic in every way. And unfortunately, have had prom, sports seasons, class events, and then graduation all taken away from them. So there's been a lot of work done with the seniors over the past couple of weeks. So one of the events we did today, this is Nina Sullivan, one of our seniors. Ms. Boynes organized buying those signs. And so today we had about 30 faculty who showed up at the high school. We threw the signs in our cars, and then we broke up into 2 groups. One group took one side of 146, the other group took the other side of 146, along with some kids in Whitensville, Douglas, and Worcester, who was school choice. And we dropped off signs to about 80 seniors today. The group of us, we started at 10:30. We started at 10 and ended at around 4:30. And I was telling Mr. Friend, it was easily the best day that we've had as a school since this all started. We actually got to see live human beings that we're not related to. The smiles on the kids and the families were pretty great, and everyone was excited to see each other, even if it was from 6 feet apart. So that's one of the events we're doing for seniors. We've had a lot of conversations with seniors and senior families around graduation. The consistent thing about graduation, the kids are fairly adamant about holding out for some sort of ceremony. We've had conversations with them about the realities of that and what probably will not happen. And that the kids understand that the traditional Sutton graduation in Mechanics Hall is not going to happen. There's no world in which we can all put 1,500 people into a room, even in August. None of us could see that happening. But given that things are loosening up and restrictions are loosening up all over, and even here in the Northeast, could we have a ceremony on the soccer field at the beginning of August, where we don't have 1,500 people, but we have a smaller amount of people, but the kids could have that sense of a ceremony where they're sitting next to, even if it's a little bit further away, their friends, and they throw their hat in the air and they get their name called. That's what they're really invested in. So they're holding out hope for that, and we're all holding out hope for that. It's our sort of number one goal. But we're also trying to do things for the kids, the seniors, the week of graduation. So we've had lots of different ideas tossed about. I'll give you for instance, one of the ideas that's being talked about is one of the things that the seniors do is their last day of classes, they have a beep day where they drive around town beeping their horns to the chagrin of all the Sutton neighbors. But in this version of Beep Day, it would actually happen on June 4th. I've already talked to Chief Toll. He would get a couple of police cars, and they would escort a parade through town of graduates, their families in their car with their cap and gown on, a parade through town. We would notify the town so maybe they could be on their lawns with signs and wave to kids as they parade through town. And maybe that parade ends at the high school with them getting their diploma there, which would not preclude them, it would not prevent us from still having a ceremony in August. So there's been lots of work going into what we're going to do for the seniors. And the one thing I just keep stressing is the way that this particular group of young people have handled this is nothing short of amazing. Not once since this has happened have I heard a senior whine, complain, moan about how this isn't fair. Every meeting I have with these kids, they are looking to problem solve, think creatively about what they can do, and not spending a lot of time frustrated about the things that got taken away from them. Given what they've lost, it's just a remarkable amount of grace and humility and maturity that everyone should be proud of. So my overarching goal with these guys is just to make sure that we do right by them. The parents have also been fantastic in also trying to problem solve creatively to get things done in a way that's going to do the best job we possibly can for these guys under the circumstances. So things are ongoing. We're hoping to tighten up with a couple of, here's what we're looking at. Like, in this week in May, we're going to do this one thing. Graduation day, we're going to do this one thing. We're hoping to have that finalized, hopefully by the end of next week, so that people can plan and start to make arrangements for those dates. So that is the high school update. I will stop sharing Nina's picture, although it's a good picture. And questions you guys might have for me.
Hey,
No questions. That's great. Thank you, Ted. Really appreciate everything all you guys are doing.
and Bruce,
No questions.
Kristen,
No, I'm good.
and Pete.
Nope. Thank you, Ted.
Did everybody figure out the list of names I wrote real quick right at the beginning of the meeting? Just a quick question, Ted, on the internships. Was there any recovery from that, or is it all
Oh, I should have.
next year?
Thank you. I should have mentioned that. That's my fault. So again, with the internships, Sergio Marcucci had placed 100 students in internships this year. We were close to, I think the actual percentage was 90. I think there was like 2 kids of the entire class who didn't want an internship, but he had placed the other 100. And then he placed his 100th kid, I think, on Thursday, March 12th. And then on March 13th, we all got sent home. So what we've done with the seniors, because that is such a big part of senior year, is some placements are still want to work with our kids. So it might be a marketing where they're like looking for our kids to do social media stuff, and things can be done from home. We have a couple kids who are getting trained as CNAs, and parents have allowed them to go to like a CNA class. But then we've also, for the last couple of years, we've been trying to get this idea of a capstone project off the ground for the kids who, like, I have 5 APs and it's just going to be hard for me to, and I play baseball in the spring. It's going to be really hard for me to get an off-campus internship, but I still want to do something creative with my 4th quarter. So we told the seniors, like, hey, we want to make this time work for you. If you can come back with a meaningful academic or internship task, we can look at it and see what we can do. So for example, we have kids who are learning ASL through an ASL program. We have one student who's going into fashion as a major in the fall. She's taking 2 online classes through the Metropolitan Museum of Art in fashion that are 20-hour total classes. So kids found creative things for themselves. So at the end of the day, we had about 20, I think I want to say about 27 seniors who have some sort of capstone internship part of their senior year.
Great, thanks. And kids' schedules for next year, how will you deal with that?
I have a meeting. We met with IPASS last week on Wednesday. I have another meeting with IPASS this week on Wednesday. Luckily for us, we had started the scheduling process with the high school. We were basically finished with that before March 13th. The 8th grade was a little trickier just because we typically do that a little bit later. But we sent home surveys to the 8th grade, and we have almost all of those back. So we have the student requests, so we know what's going to run and what's not going to run. And we actually start building a schedule this week. So we'll have an idea of, what classes are happening, and if a kid, I signed up for intro to psych and graphic design, but they meet at the same time. You got to pick one, that kind of thing. Then once we know those conflicts, Lindsay and Aaron, our guidance counselors, will have individual meetings with students to say, hey, your schedule is almost done, but you have a whole 6th period. Here's what you can do, and have meetings with kids that way.
Thanks. And much like Nate had said, thanks very much. It's an interesting way to run the high school. But I really appreciate the work.
Church school was a lot easier.
Yeah. I don't know why there weren't 41 or 71 spots in the invitational, but that's all right. I'm not hurt.
I don't want you to beat me, Paul.
Yeah. That's easy to take care of.
Any other questions for anybody?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Jerry,
Okay.
another principal from down on the Cape.
Well, don't judge. Don't judge. So I've been monitoring student engagement every week, asking the teachers to, through a survey to just say, percentage-wise, how many kids are you seeing engaged with you? And it's increasing every week. We're getting probably about 80 to 100% of our kids being engaged in our learning. I also go to all the team meetings, and that's the critical piece, is where I actually talk to the teachers and say, hey, is there anybody falling short? Do we see anybody who hasn't attended anything? And then those kids are the kids that bring up at our SAM meeting, and we give those kids out to one of us to reach out to parents and say, how can we help? What do we need to do? Prior to us leaving, or right away when we left, we did assign the IAs to our special ed kids. We also assigned some of our high-risk students to people to reach out to, and we've been monitoring those kids as well. I think we've gotten pretty much everybody, all of the kids engaged in one form or another. But when a name comes up, hey, I haven't seen so-and-so this week, we send something out to that parent to say, hey, what's going on? How can we help? Any questions on engagement?
Nate,
No questions. Thank you.
Bruce,
No questions?
Kristen,
No questions.
and Pete.
Not me.
All right.
No, that's great. That's good to hear that we're doing on both sides.
So just to, we did the two big things to kids because of this virus. We took their friends away from them, and we took their school away from them. So what we're trying to do constantly is trying to figure out ways to get the kids to have some sort of fun with us and engage with them that way. So we've done several things so far with the kids. We've run a spirit week where we had the kids send us pictures of every day, and we put a digital parade together. We did the superhero lunch lady digital parade for the lunch ladies. We're going to be doing a Kahoot trivia Zoom meeting. Ms. Corn's going to be running. And we're also trying to figure out how we can do online bingo with the kids. This month, we also set up the newsletter. I got almost 100% of the staff to send me something. And we sent that out to parents. And I sent that out also to the individual kids. And in that was a contest of, can you identify your teachers through their baby pictures? And then as well as the list of all the virtual clubs that they can attend. And so far, hats off to Tracy Martell. She set up a camera in her kitchen, and she's doing a virtual cooking club. And kids are watching those videos at their leisure. They're making the products that she's showing them how to make, and they're sending her back the pictures of it. So that's really kind of cute too. And that's pretty much it for me.
Super. Nate?
No, that's all great news. Really excited when I saw all the clubs. It's always impressive how well they're doing keeping the kids engaged. Thank you.
And Bruce?
I'm good. Thank you, Jerry.
All right.
Kristen?
I got a quick question for you, Jerry.
Yeah.
We're looking at week 5. Do you think we've seen improvement? Has it stayed the same as far as the amount of engagement? As you look, the 8th grade's most engaged and the 6th grade is least engaged. So what are you thinking? I mean, what have you guys been doing differently in 6th grade, or what are you going to try to do?
I think it comes to being technically savvy. I think the 8th graders are a lot more independent. They're a lot more technical savvy. I think the 6th graders definitely got the rug pulled out from under them, and they're just having a really hard time figuring it out and how to resource their time. And one of the things that we listened to, Jill Carnes had sent out a survey to the parents, and from that we really had to step back and go, oh, this Monday through Friday doesn't work for the majority of our families. We should be doing a Friday to Friday, so that way parents, especially at the younger level, can work with the kids and say, okay, how are we going to pull all this work off? And hopefully we started that this week. We're going to be looking at that to see if that made any improvement with the 6th graders, trying to figure out how to manage their time, manage their devices. But the 6th grade team has done an amazing job as far as trying to keep the kids up and reaching out to the kids. I know Mr. V is doing unbelievable work with the Zoom meetings.
Thank you.
MP?
Nope. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
Yes, same thing. Thanks here. It's amazing what y'all are putting together and doing. I'm curious, experiences with Zoom, you've done more than just a classroom now. Is there a point where Zoom doesn't work because there's too many people on, or how the tool's working?
So far, the teachers haven't said anything about Zoom meetings being difficult. We know that the cap is at 100. So that's why when we're doing these social things like bingo and the Kahoot trivia, we're going to have to do it by grade level and see how the kids do it and how many kids show up. I sense that the kids will want to do that, especially when it comes to the bingo. We're planning on mailing out all the kids a bingo card set and then running bingo at certain times with Mr. Trolio and Miss Korn. So hopefully that works great.
Super. And other staff concerns that you've seen or heard, or things that you think we need to be doing to make sure they're ready to go next year, as well as figuring out how to make this year work?
So I really think that the letter that Ted sent out to everybody to kind of basically take a breath. We can bring kids back up academically later. Right now we need to really work on kids' social emotional needs. I think that helped the teachers kind of take a deep breath themselves and say, gee, maybe I can slow down a little bit. Because I've had several calls and made several calls to teachers to walk them off the ledge, to be honest.
Right.
Oh.
Thanks again. And Ted Friend, have you got anything on either?
I just want to say that I couldn't be more proud of our staff and what they've done. The phone calls I have received, I've received some phone calls of parents really struggling, and then I've received some phone calls from parents that think we should be doing more. It's hard to find that delicate balance, but it's hard to believe, and this is across the country, that you can shut down school one day. I mean, all of a sudden, one day school was out, and we've had to learn how to adapt and adjust. And I think the entire staff has done a phenomenal job with that. And I think it's going to have a long-term impact on what public education looks like in the future. That's for sure.
Thanks, Jerry. Let's hop on over to the FY20 budget update. Nancy.
Thanks, Jerry.
Hello. Okay, well, I wanted to start off by just updating you on the reimbursements and where we stand. So at this point in time, we've reimbursed all the sports fees for the spring. And we're in the process of reimbursing the bus and the parking fees. These are going to take more time as their checks. We weren't able to do it electronically like we were with the spring sports, but I sent an email out and notified the parents that they'll be coming within the next couple weeks. And then in regards to food services, I'm happy to.
Nancy,
Yes.
just remind the audience what the reimbursement is for the bus fee and the parking fee, please.
So the bus fee is $60 and the parking fee is $35. So
That's the balance of unused time.
exactly 58 days left of school closure was reimbursed for. Does anybody else have any questions on that before I move on to food services?
I have a question, Nancy. Yeah, a question for you or a question for Ted. Given the economic impact of this pandemic, with the remaining bus fee, fingers crossed that we go back to school in the fall. Is there an option for any parents to pay it forward with that balance and put it towards somebody who might need a bus fee next year?
So
I've actually received quite a few emails from parents who replied and asked if they could do that.
And I'm not, I mean, we're not going to be using the bus, but I would be very happy to take that $60 that's coming back to us and apply it towards somebody who needs a bus fee next year.
So Bruce, what we did, and we have had a number of people. I had a parent call me today to donate money for lunches. What we've done is we've reached out to the families and said, listen, if you have any hardship at all financially, we're not going to investigate or anything. But if a parent reaches out to us and says we can't pay the bus fee this year, we're going to waive that bus fee, and just be realistic about what families are facing right now. So we have money in the reserve in those accounts, and if parents can't afford to pay it next year, then we will waive that. And then I think we do have to think about, do we set up some type of a fund for the school for parents that do want to donate, and how that might look in the future. But we started to look at all of those different ways to deal with this money that's left over. And it was just too complicated to try to parse out how best to do it. So we're reimbursing everybody. And then as we go forward, I think if parents want to donate, we can set something up for the community.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, Nancy, please.
Okay. And then I wanted to touch base again on food services. Last time we spoke, I mentioned that there was a waiver out there, and they were reimbursing us for breakfast and lunches. And so we have heard that waiver went back to the beginning of the school closure, which was great news. So due to having a healthy balance in our food service revolving account, forecasting it out, I'm thinking we'll have about 100,000 left in that revolving account at the end of this school year. And that's due to the reimbursements. And then I also, did anybody have any questions on that?
Just Nate
No questions. Thank you.
and Bruce,
No questions.
Kristen,
No questions.
and Pete.
Nope, thanks, Nancy.
On that 100K, is that in a revolving account that we can move across years, or does that have to zero out by the end of the year?
No, we can, it's a continuing account. Yep. And then I also wanted to update you on the out of district's tuitions. So per the Department of Education guidance that they have given us, if an out of district school is providing remote learning, we can pay the tuitions. So all of our out of district schools have provided us with remote learning plans. And we sent a survey out to our families, out of district families, to see how that's going. So we are going to be paying all of our out-of-district tuitions. And we also have submitted our circuit breaker extraordinary relief, and we're waiting approval and kind of to know the amount that we'll be receiving with that. So once I get that information, I'll be coming back to you with a forecasted revolving account for circuit breaker and school choice as to where we stand. Anybody have any questions on that?
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. And then I wanted to talk about AA transportation. So at the last meeting, I mentioned that I've been working with approximately 13 other school districts who also have AA transportation as a transportation provider. And even though our current contract states for services rendered, it's our goal to ensure that AA remains sustainable and viable during this unprecedented time. So what we have done with this other school districts is created a tentative agreement with AA transportation, which each of you should have. So this agreement, it can be changed as any school district wishes to change it. So I just kind of wanted to go over that with you because it needs school committee approval. So the way it's written is, well, to date, we paid AA transportation for the month of March, and we owe for April, May, and June. So that would total $257,580. So what AA transportation is proposing is that we pay 75% of that. So they're proposing that they laid off all their drivers. So if we agree to this, they will reemploy all of their drivers and support personnel that work for Sutton Public Schools. They will make them whole from a wage and benefit standpoint, and they'll retro it back to March 17th, which is the day that they were laid off. And they will base their rate off of their daily rate. They also, so they're gonna, and they'll agree to us paying 75% of that amount, which is the savings to the school for $64,395. The other thing that's mentioned in the agreement is that they have applied for the SBA loan under the CARES Act, and they have agreed that they will notify us if they do receive this CARES Act loan or any other stimulus grant loan. If they receive the money and it goes above the 75% of what we pay them, they will either reimburse us or apply it to future payments moving forward. So I would like to ask the committee to consider approving the amendment as you see fit for AA transportation for the school year.
So the way I'd like to do this is we'll get a motion and then discuss the motion. So I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agreement as presented.
So moved.
And then a second.
Second?
So Nate, questions or comments?
I swear it's tough always to go first.
Next week, it'll be different, I'm sure.
Yeah. You know, this is a tough one because you look at it and say, okay, well, we're not using it, and you know, all the aspects of them laying off their folks and not needing the fuel and the maintenance and all that. But at the same time, we've used AAA for how many years now? It tends to be the one bus company that comes back and is able to provide our transportation needs. And we really do need to keep them going in business and hopefully, you know, make their folks, you know, able to get by. So in that regard, I'm for this, as tough as it is, and as much as I'd like to save money, it sounds fairly reasonable, considering that if they get this federal support, that, you know, we may get a rebate going forward. So at the moment, I'm for it until maybe I hear other folks' input.
Bruce?
How was the 75% determined?
So the group was handled with 2 people from other school districts and Ron. And I just think percentages were thrown out there. They talked about fuel. They talked about repair, keeping the buses running. That's as much as I know as to how it was.
Okay. I guess, I don't know, we're paying with, this is taxpayer money. I know it's school budget money, but to me, I don't know. I think I want to have input from Jim Smith and even the Board of Selectmen on how they think of this. That's a big nut to be paying. I'm all in favor of taking care of people who are out of work right now. I think it's fantastic. But this isn't my money to say yes or no. This is I think that we need guidance from the town hall.
Kristen?
Okay, so here's my take on it. All right, so we've laid off, or they furloughed all these people who all should have applied for unemployment assistance, which will be covered. So that's what I'd expect his employees to do. So I have the concern that we're going to back pay them for this. My second thing is, if he is applying for the Paycheck Protection Plan, it's 2.5 times your your monthly salary costs, which include health insurance and all of that. So why are we needing to pay twice? So they're getting it from the federal government, and then we'd also be paying them. So I'm a big no on this. This isn't okay. So that's how I feel. And yes, it's as Bruce said, it's taxpayers' money. This is more than just me, but I don't find the $64,000 reasonable. Okay, bus maintenance perhaps, and to be able to keep the fleet in business, sure, but not paying doubly for pay for the people who drive. I'm sorry, no. I'm done.
Yeah, that is a difficult one. I tend to agree with everybody what they have said. I think a little bit of input from the town does make some sense, like Bruce said too. But if they're double dipping here, that's not, that's not right either.
Yeah, I guess I want to second some of what Nate's been saying around AA has been really been a very good partner, has helped out and has been sort of the choice available. I think we've also had drivers who have been with AA who we were all pretty comfortable with, that it'd be nice to keep them on board. As I said, I agree with everybody though. I think input from the town at the very least, if there are any other implications. And then my suspicion is that if you try to double dip, you're going to that's going to catch up to you, but I don't know when. So I think it would be interesting for me at least to hear that space also. Others want another round? Nate?
Well, I guess when do we need this vote done by, and can we postpone it for now? Because it would be great to get some input. All valid points brought up.
Right. So that would be my recommendation. Right. We've got the motion. We'll I think it's pretty clear where it's headed.
Sure.
Bruce?
No, I mean,
Same spot.
if we're going to go with this, I want to see how 75% was determined. Show me the numbers, but I want input from the town before I make a decision.
Yep. Kristen, any more?
Just that, again, like I said, it's my concern. So if any of these people have collected unemployment insurance, they're getting that, plus then they'll get paid for this. And then if they're getting the Paycheck Protection Plan, if they happen to get that loan and the forgiveness, then they've got another 2 months worth of salary that's right there. So yeah, 75,000, 64,000, I still think 64 is way too much.
Okay.
So yeah, I like the bus driver we used to have, but that ultimately isn't our responsibility. Sorry.
And Pete?
No, I'm good.
So I don't think there's any issue with, unless somebody complains, I'm not going to take it to a vote. I'm simply going to come back with feedback that we're looking for input from Jim and potentially Board of Selectmen, where they stand on this. We'd like to understand more clearly what the impact of unemployment is. If they've been able to receive unemployment and then they get the back pay, how does that work out? And then the other question was, can we get a little more understanding around how we came up with 75%? And unless one of the four says, no, I'd like to see the vote, I'm going to stop there.
I think everybody said no. That's what I thought I heard.
Other items, Nancy?
That is it for me, unless anyone has any questions.
Any other subjects, Nate?
For me? Oh, no, all set, Nancy. Thank you.
And Bruce?
I'm fine.
Kristen?
I've said enough.
And Pete?
Nope, thank you.
And thanks, Nancy. It's
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda. Oh, this is a good one. Let's talk about the school calendar.
Okay.
I think we should go to school virtually on Good Friday and on the 24th of December.
We're not deciding anything tonight. But because there's too many unknowns out there. And so I don't think we need to have a very long discussion. And I think we've already talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that I've been working with the administration and the union is on having our first two orientation days on August 27th, 28th for staff. So they come in earlier than we normally would. And then on Monday would be the orientation day, August 31st. And then the first day for students would be Tuesday, September 1st. We would still have to have our professional development day on November 3rd. I was thinking that we could do a full day of parent conferences, but that would be an additional school day because the students wouldn't be in school. So we would still do that. And the glitch I have right now are those 2 half days for parent conferences in November. In light of what's happened, where we haven't had school for 58 days, we need to spend a little bit more time talking about when would be the most advantageous time next year to have parent conferences. And it's almost as if we're going to have to wait and see what school is going to look like next year before we even schedule those dates. There's too much up in the air. And then everything else just kind of falls in. Oh, there's just one other thing. I guess they're scheduling marathon Monday, September 14th, which is going to be a state holiday this year. So that would also be a no school day. And then it just pretty much stays the same. March changes a little bit where we'll just do a half day in March, not a full day PD day. But I think we just have to hold on to this until we really have more clarity on what school is going to look like next year.
Nate?
No questions. I think we're going to see what happens. Thanks.
Bruce?
I'm good. I'm just glad we're starting to formulate a plan for both scenarios, starting and not starting.
Kristen?
So, okay, so yeah, I agree. It's good that we're starting a plan. So my question is, so you're still envisioning that the calendar is going to look the same? Given all of what's going on?
You know what? The things I've been listening, the conferences I've been attending on a daily basis, it's kind of frightening. Michael's in Hawaii. He just I'm sorry. I have no idea what next year is going to look like. We're beginning to talk about it, but the more you talk about it, the more frightening it gets. But right now, I don't want to invest a tremendous amount of time into the calendar with all the unknowns, other than starting the school year a little early, doing our PD up front, and our PD will all be designed around remote learning and supporting kids in this new model of learning. So that's an issue with the union that has to be negotiated, but I certainly want to get that accomplished so that we can provide that professional development to our teachers before the school year begins.
So you're really thinking that that is more than enough time to do what we need to do?
Well, I think that we'll need more time over the summer. I think that we're going to have to invest in additional to that, have working groups over the summer in anticipation that learning will be different next year. So I think that's for the entire staff, where everybody's contractured to come back. But then I think we have to build in some funding, to build in voluntary stipended position or stipended dollars for teachers to work in teams to prepare for what school will look like next year.
Okay. So when this is all, I'm assuming, starting now?
Well, right now, I think that they're all, trying to teach remotely, learning how to teach remotely. Families, we all face it, although it's nice to be a little bit older and not have kids at home. I think the teachers right now have enough on their plate, but once the school year ends, I think the teachers are going to want to take a deep breath, and then I think the vast majority are going to want to dive right back in and get fully prepared, because we gave them a 1 hour notice. So then we'll have the summer to kind of really do some deep planning and deep professional development for our teachers. So we're ready for whatever comes our way next year, whether it's remote learning, or whether it's any of these kind of crazy notions that people are floating out there for what school is going to look like next year.
Okay, so then that I'm still concerned that that's not necessarily enough time for the appropriate planning in order to move into this next phase of next year.
Well, I can't add days to the calendar. That's the time we're going to have. I think just doing what they're doing now and learning on the fly is getting a lot of people, there's a lot of PD going on right now just by what they're doing. They're making mistakes, learning from those mistakes. But again, our window is going to be the summer. And you're right, it won't be enough time, but it's the time that we're going to have. I'm going to have to do the best we can with that time.
So will we consider longer school days?
Again, that would be, we have talked about that. Michael, the union and I, we've had meetings about, for the fall, as an idea, that maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a week, you had an extended school day, where the buses maybe pick up the kids a little bit later, 2 or 3 days a week for kids so that kids can get some additional help with their schoolwork. That's one idea that we talked about. But again, it's hard to prepare too much where we simply don't have enough information on what is going to actually happen next year. What I will tell you in my prepared remarks that I want to say is, what we do have to do is make sure we're fully staffed next year. Next year is going to be a crucial year. We're going to need all hands on deck next year because it's going to look so different. Unless something magical happens between now and August of next year, you're going to have potentially staff that aren't able to return to school. You're going to have students that potentially are not going to be able to return to school. We're going to have to provide remote learning for those students. They're talking about things like one day half the students come to school and the next day the other half of the students come to school. There's all kinds of ideas floating out there. There is a committee at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education that is now working on plans for next year. I have a conference call every week with them. I had mine with them this morning. And so hopefully that's going to give us some more guidance. But again, it's just the first week of May. It's still 4 months away. And so I'm hoping that, you know, I guess I'm naively hoping that things will turn around a little bit and we will be able to return. I don't think we'll ever return again to what it was. I mean, let's be honest. I think businesses across this country are going to be different going forward. You know, I look at my son who works for Transamerica. He was working from home remotely 2 days a week. They were looking to start their own, to consolidate their company into one location. And I would imagine that company saying, wait a minute, we're getting all of our work done and no one's coming to work. And productivity has not gone down. So I think what we need, to your point, Kristen, and I know I'm rambling here, we need the summer to do PD. We need those first 3 days to do PD. And we need all of next year to, unfortunately, finish the work of the strategic plan and finish the work of the restructuring group in light of all that's happened. This is a game changer. Our strategic plan is going to look different. Our district structure is going to look different. And that's going to be what we're going to be doing all of next year.
Okay. At least for now.
MP?
No, I'm glad that some of this remote learning has now been fleshed out enough that going forward, I mean, we could potentially steal a snow day back virtually. That those, if things are going to change in the future and we're never going to be the same again, some of these things that we're learning here might be part of the new normal.
I agree.
What's the timing you'd need, or do you think you'd provide if you're going to have parent-teacher conferences and you know it's going to be loose? I'm not sure how much time parents would be expecting or how we give them a heads up on that.
Well, no, I was just thinking the timing of it. You know how the principals have talked in the past that November is the key time. It's the end of the marking period, yada, yada. But this year, you know, I could see a scenario where the kids are in school for 7 weeks and parents are going to want to meet with those teachers and get an idea of where their child is and how much they've caught up to where they left off last year, how they're feeling emotionally. And so I could imagine us doing our parent conferences in October next year, more so than November. That's what I want to flush out with the principals and the staff.
And so the piece I'm just asking is, as you go to flush that out, I understand it's still sort of set in jello, is if you think that's going to move around, I'm not sure how much time you need, right? I mean, if you did have to move it, if you said we're looking at October, but if it goes well, we'll move it back to November. My suspicion is you don't have to give the parents more than a week's notice, but I do think that's worth giving some thought to.
Sure, I think giving parents at least a month's heads up would be more than enough time.
Okay.
We all have to be flexible here. And we all have to be understanding that we've never faced this before, and we just need to be patient.
The other piece to that is I think it's worth having a schedule, at least in your mind, or that we can start to talk about in another meeting around where do you think you want to be setting that date. I appreciate you just said we all have to be flexible, but I think it would be useful to know that the plan is by August 2nd or by July 5th to have a proposed calendar for the year, so that while you might not be able to answer the question, you can at least give folks some guidance around when you anticipate.
My goal would be to have a proposed calendar updated in June.
Okay.
I think we want to have that done. I think that it is complicated because we're in a contract year with the union, and this is a change in the current contract. So those things kind of tie together. I think the union, I think the union would be fine with us for next year starting on the 27th and 28th, because I think they would like to get some PD in early, and because it's such an unusual situation. So I don't think they would be opposed to that. So I just have to work that out with the union, make sure they're on board, and then come back probably the second meeting in June and finalize the calendar.
Okay. Superintendent's update.
So just a couple of, well, I've got a number of things that I want to say, but first, just some town information. The town meeting as of now has been rescheduled from May 11th to June 22nd. Town elections have been rescheduled from May 26th to June 23rd. And tomorrow evening is a joint meeting of the FinCom and Select Board to talk about the 2021 budget. So those are important dates. We do not have a FinCom date as of this moment. I'm anticipating that's going to take place. I don't know if it'll take place in mid to late May. I'm not quite sure yet. Just some updates on the Simonian Center. All teachers are holding at least 2 Zoom weekly meetings, with additions with Google Classroom assignments and activities. Instructional assistants are holding extra Zoom meetings with small groups of students. They're doing fluency practice, and for students unable or unwilling to join, for students that might not be comfortable with the large group, they meet with smaller groups with kids who don't like the large groups. In the elementary school, participation in remote learning varies between 85 and 100% on any given day. Participation in special education small group sessions are averaging 98%, and 96% of all teachers and instructional assistants are using Zoom and/or Google Chat to work and communicate with students. Special education has been hard hit, as you could imagine. Unfortunately, with special education, there are all of these restrictions and laws that guide special education. And so because this remote learning has changed that whole environment, what does the federal and state government do? They put more paperwork in front of special needs folks and ask them to do a whole new set of additional plans beyond all of their updated plans every quarter and their IEP meetings and their 3-year evals. So it just puts special pressure on our special education department, and they are working extremely hard. They're also looking in special education as to what summer will look like. What will that summer program look like? We have tentatively scheduled summer school for special needs kids to start after the 4th of July. But they're planning contingency plans to do that remotely. They're planning contingency plans to maybe start even further into the summer if we think we can hold the sessions at our school. But again, we're just waiting to find out the guidance from the governor. We've also looked to realign staff and our staffing needs for next year. And so we're going to be moving a middle school special needs teacher from the middle school down to the elementary school to provide more supports in the elementary school for next year, which is going to work out quite nicely. And Karen has been working on a regular basis with Andrea, our new special education director, who will start on July 1st. As you can well imagine, Andrea is a little tied up in Boston at the very moment. To this date, we've had 120 Chromebooks that have been delivered to families or picked up by families in Sutton. We had a first wave, and now we've had 2 or 3 additional waves. What we found is parents with 2 or 3 children, they need more devices in their homes. So we've been able to provide that for families. We still have some Chromebooks available to families. If they need them, they can just reach out to myself or Mr. Durgan, our tech director. All of our custodians are back to work. They started last week, and they're starting their summer cleaning. We've purchased $1,000 worth of paint this past week, and we're going to start painting areas of our elementary and early learning center so that we can get ahead of some of that work over the next several months. Okay. As many of you have probably seen, I did send a letter out to parents. I've received a number of emails from parents, calls from parents, emails from staff, emails from team chairs about the pressure that's building in many households in our community. And I really believe that students will be able to get caught up academically. I mean, they have a long life ahead of them. They measure graduate from college now in 6 years, not in the traditional 4 years anymore. There shouldn't be that big of a rush. We want to prevent regression, but we certainly want to prevent a mental health crisis that is looming out there. And so we've asked parents to just work with our teachers. If they're feeling that it's getting overwhelming in the home, take a break. Take a day off. We will get the kids caught back up. I have spoken to Jim Smith. As you can imagine, we speak on a regular basis. So Jim is meeting tomorrow night with the FinCom and the Select Board, and he is still committed to providing $400,000 of local aid to the town, to the school system next year. However, he is going to put on hold the $1 million cap on special education. We will revisit that once we know where we are financially. He's also doing what I think is a very wise move. He's pulling back on the capital plan. And so things like the rubber floor in the elementary and early learning center, the chiller out behind my shoulder here, some of the big items we're going to put on hold. They're going to stockpile some free cash until we understand the full extent of the COVID-19 crisis and the fact that people have been working for many, many months. And so I think that's a very smart move on the town side. I did, if I understood my Zoom meeting this morning with the Commissioner of Education, I do believe that the CARES Act, the initial round of the CARES Act, is going to provide all school districts 80% of their Title I funding for this year, an additional 80%. So for our district, if that's true, that would be an additional $34,000. And so to Kristen's point, I would see that $34,000 as one-time funds, and to not build a cliff. An ideal use of that money would be, for instance, paying teachers to work over the summer to build professional development for remote learning and other types of learning. Another great use of that would be to target some of that money to provide summer school in August, a 2-week boot camp, pay our teachers to come in the summer, provide summer school for all students, not just special needs students, if we can do that. And the third idea I have to use some of that money would be to hire someone like Carol McMahon, our school adjustment counselor in the elementary school, to come back in the fall on a part-time basis to support students that are having social and emotional issues, because I think there are going to be great needs to help. There are going to be kids who are going to be struggling coming back to school next year. There are going to be children who are afraid to come back to school next year. And so we're going to need some additional support. So that was good to hear. Hopefully we'll be able to use the money in that way if we can. That was just an idea that I had. I will certainly work with the administration and the school committee on that. As I said earlier, we're going to have we're going to be able to retain a significant amount of money in our school choice revolving account because we've closed school. Even with the increase in out-of-district placements of $221,000, because we closed school in mid-March, we will be able to build our school choice or maintain our school choice and actually backfill some circuit breaker money. So we'll be in pretty good financial shape compared to most areas because we've been so conservative over the last 10 years. The town has reserve funds. We have reserve funds. But with that said, I am holding off on filling the nurse position. Obviously, we're going to have to hire a nurse with COVID-19. And I strongly believe that we need to replace the English teacher and the 2 teaching positions that have retired and the assistant principal position with Mr. DeLongchamp going. But again, we haven't posted, well, we had actually posted a couple of those positions, but we've held off doing interviews until we have a clearer picture of where where our finances are. And I do want to post this week an internal posting for assistant principal. So my plan for the assistant principal for next year would be to hire from within. So first of all, it would save us a significant amount of money because whoever we hire from within, the replacement cost of that teacher will be about $25,000, and the interim assistant principal will make less than what Mr. DeLongchamp is currently making. What I'd like to do is at least do that process, see who's interested, with the candidates fully knowing that we can't make this official until we know where our finances are. Now, again, I'm sharing my opinion. As a superintendent, I've been doing this for over 30 years. This is a year we have to provide as much support for our students as humanly possible. And I do recognize, and I want to be very clear with the school committee, that I can't bankrupt the district either. It'll be thoughtful, but we are probably going to have to dip into our reserves a little bit more next year. And that gives us an entire year to plan out the future of the Sutton Public Schools in light of what's happening. But I don't see us making those final decisions until June and maybe even past June. Let me just give you one example of what we need to sort out: busing. So let's say we go back to school next year and everything's fine. I would imagine that a lot of parents are not going to put their students on the bus. And so if we eliminated one bus route, that'll save about $90,000. So figuring out our budget for next year is going to take the next several months to do, because there are so many unknowns taking place. But as your superintendent, and I'm speaking to the community, next year we need our class sizes to be as small as possible, to allow these kids to get caught up, to provide individual support for students, to provide extra help sessions after school if need be. But I think it's going to take the next couple of months to figure all of that out.
I want to just take a break real quick and run around. Nate, Nate, do you have questions, concerns so far?
No, nothing to bring up at the moment.
And Bruce?
Nothing at the time.
And Kristen?
No, I'm good.
Pete?
I just wanted to say that if you are going to hire from within for that assistant position, that would make a lot of sense to have another familiar face for someone to lean on rather than to have a brand new face in town that nobody nobody knows. Just makes a lot of sense.
I am so glad you said that. That was the other big reason. We have some candidates internally that are licensed to fill this role, but they know all the kids. And an assistant principal is going to be a very different role next year. There's going to be a lot of hand-holding in the next year. So thank you for reminding me of that.
On the, just so I'm clear, we've got a whole list of potential new hires. Those you wouldn't act on for this year. What would the timing be? When would you want to be making offers on those?
Well, the principals would like to make them now. Okay. But I have always been very conservative and thoughtful about the budget. And so I think by the middle of June, we'll have a clearer picture of where the budget is. We might actually even have to wait until after the town meeting to do some hiring. Now, this particular year, there probably isn't going to be a big rush. I know that in my meetings with the Blackstone Valley superintendents, there are going to be a lot of school districts that are going to have to lay off teachers next year because they were looking for overrides. So there's going to be a strong pool of candidates to fill positions. So in all likelihood, we're probably looking at these positions being filled either June or July, once we have a clear understanding where the budget lies.
A big part of the reason why I asked that, and I'm trying to get a timing, is I think the committee should look at when do we come back and talk about the current year budget, where it's at, as well as next year's budget. If the committee is looking for a direction or wants to participate in conversations around class size versus how much money we're putting into revolving accounts, the current budget would really allow spending higher than we might anticipate, much the same way we were talking about with the bus spending. That money's in the budget, and I think technically the way we would give guidance to the superintendent is we would go back over that. So sorry, Ted, but that's sort of why I was asking is we should make sure we coordinate and we don't end up with, but that money was already spent and the committee wondering how that came down.
So what I'm waiting on is to find out what's happening with extraordinary relief with special education. So Nancy and I were talking that probably our next meeting, if not the next meeting, the first meeting in June, we would come back to you with exactly what we anticipate having remaining in the budget. And we've already done most of that work. We just want to wait to see where, for instance, this thing I'm pointing behind me is that water, the tanks that drain, where Roger's accounts land. We have a pretty good idea of what we're going to have remaining in school choice and in circuit breaker. But we just wanted to get a couple more bill cycles to go through. So I would say if you want, we can have probably a conversation 2 weeks from now and give you a clear understanding of what we anticipate we're going to be able to carry over in school choice and circuit breaker for next year.
I do think it's appropriate, and it would give the committee opportunity to talk about. We approved a budget. Most years you approve the budget, and the intent would be operate within that budget, and we wouldn't get involved. You would execute to the budget. But the budget that we approved is not necessarily the budget you're executing to. It's easier to have the conversation before the money goes than after. That's
sure. And I'm sure you all know this. We're spending no money unless we really need to spend money, with the one exception of maybe getting some painting done and some repairs done to our facility, which makes sense. It's a one-time expense. Otherwise, basically all accounts are frozen except for payroll, heat, electricity, and the normal line items. So we'll present that at the next meeting for everybody.
Other items you had?
So the Blackstone Valley Consortium Group, when we started, we did the engineering course this year. Through the $25,000 money that we got from the state, we did hire a high school principal who was a former assistant superintendent, and she did an amazing amount of work developing protocols, memorandums of understanding between the communities. We've identified 5 or 6 courses that we can operate through that consortium. We do not anticipate receiving any funding from the state now this year because of COVID-19. But we don't want to lose sight of that. So we still want to move forward at least with 1 or 2 courses if we can. We're looking for some grant funding. That Title I funding that we're receiving, maybe we take a little bit of that money. But that's a really exciting proposition. And it would be a shame if we just threw that away because of this. So I'll continue to pursue that work for the district and for students, but I just want to make you aware that that has not gone away. And, you know, really next year for me and for the administrative team and for the school committee, the strategic planning committee, and the restructuring committee, it really takes on a new light and a new focus. And I think when I say that, I think we need to have all hands on deck next year. I think because we're in crisis mode and we need a full year to sort out what this all looks like. Take our lessons, learn what's working, learn what's not working. What does the future of education hold? And then we'll look to make the appropriate changes and live within our budget. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, you are going to have to do my evaluation. You know, unfortunately, the 2 main goals of the strategic plan and the restructuring committee kind of got put on hold. What we've done with the educators is we've agreed that unless something changed dramatically from 1 year to the next, we will just basically give the same rating as we did the previous year under the 4 categories in the overall rating. So that's what we're doing with all the STA members. I'm not sure how you want to handle my evaluation. Statutorily, I have to have an evaluation completed, you know, before the end of the school year, no later than the last meeting in June. So I just wanted to put that out to the committee and out to Paul, the chair, as how you'd like to handle that going forward.
So let's have that on the agenda, the next meeting, second May meeting, to talk through and get input there. And
okay.
Folks can give it some thought. It'll be a short turnaround, but it doesn't take that long to do it. It just takes a long time to find it and fill it out.
I can have Diane send you out the template, just so you have the template that you use every year.
Once more around the horn, Nate.
Nothing at the time. Thanks.
And Bruce.
Ted, couple questions. Staff, healthy, everybody safe and well?
Knock on wood, the staff is healthy. We did have couple of staff members lose their parents or grandparents to COVID-19. But by and large, I think people are knock on wood, pretty healthy. I haven't heard of any outbreaks with the staff or with students or families. I was out today when the parents are coming up. I will tell you the line out the road for food. We packed food up for a week. The line is growing every week. We have lots and lots of families availing themselves to the lunch program that we have here, the breakfast and lunch program. But so far, staff are doing pretty well.
Okay. And again, I've got one in, and my compliments. They're keeping them busy, doing a good job. Your note about kids and mental health and taking a day off, I think that extends to the teachers as well. This is new ground, and they need to, if they need to have a day off that way for mental health, I think it goes both ways. This is challenging for them too. My wife's a teacher as well, and I understand the frustrations that she has in trying to convey, the teaching lessons that way. So we just have to be a little mindful and respectful of that. And I know you are. And the last thing is, and you hit it, there are people lining up for breakfasts and lunch. we made another run for the food pantry today. We still have people signing up for the food pantry at the senior center. So, people in town, if you can do it, please give Michelle a call and drop some food off, or some cleaning supplies, or personal hygiene supplies. There's a cart out in front. She's there in the morning. Let's take care of the people in our town.
I agree. I don't think Jerry mentioned it, but the middle school fundraiser for the trip to Washington, D.C., they donated $4,400 to the food bank. And Ian Corn did a group that did work, and they donated over $1,000 to the food bank. I will tell you, this community's come together, and I've had probably 10 phone calls of parents looking how they can help. And I know that we're going to need that help going forward, but thank you for reminding the community of that, Bruce.
Pete?
I don't know if these are comments directed to Ted. I just wanted to share that the way the kids are learning now, as you know, my wife's aide as well. She's finding that children who maybe aren't willing to participate in school are really becoming more engaged with this virtual learning. She's finding out about kids that kind of slip through the cracks a little bit in a normal situation, who are making stronger connections with her and the teacher she works with. And it's just interesting. It does reinforce the fact that all kids learn a little bit differently. So there are positives to this, as well as, of course, all the negatives.
Ted, any others on the superintendent's update? Nate, anything for new business agenda action?
Well, I tell you about the murder hornets, but they're a little bit far west right now. So
Good news. Good news. Bruce, please don't tell me about the murder hornets or whatever they are.
No, that's quite all right. That's fine. I'm good, thank you.
And Kristen?
Mute.
Sorry, stay away from poison ivy. It's out everywhere.
Oh, excellent. And check for ticks.
Yes, that too.
Pete?
Nope, I'm all set.
The offsite meeting that we're going to have this summer, well, I'll have to talk with Ted. I don't know how we do that via Zoom. Maybe it's a shortened agenda.
Go where Michael is.
Yeah, or out in the field. We can stay 10 feet apart. But we'll figure something out. But obviously, it won't be what we've done in prior years. You talked about the evaluation, so we'll get an answer on that. Sort of a sample size of one, the younger grades. I think over time, the one teacher I've talked to, what has become an opportunity for parents to see just what goes on in those little classes has now become an opportunity to steal away 15 or 20 minutes where the child is locked in and doing something. So that's kind of fun to see. May the 4th be with you. Let's get a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Like to
Second.
shout out, to my son Nicholas, 32 years old today.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, man.
Congrats. So roll call vote. Nate?
Jerome, aye.
Bruce?
Edwards, aye.
Kristen?
Okay.
Pete?
Aye.
And Paul Brennan, aye. Thanks, everybody. That's great. 3 in a row.